Second species counterpoint, rule number 1. There are 2 notes of counterpoint for each note of cantus. Notice in this example, the cantus firmus is on the top, the counterpoint is written below. With 2 notes for every 1 note of cantus, you create a strong beat and a weak beat. The strong beat occurs when both voices move at the same time, and the weak beat results when only one voice moves. So beat 1 is considered the strong beat, beat 3 is considered the weak beat. Also note that this counterpoint, as in first species, begins on the unison. When the counterpoint is below, you may begin on the unison or the octave, but also note that we must end leading tone tonic. Second species counterpoint, rule number 2. The counterpoint may begin with 2 half notes or a half rest and half note. And again, the same starting pitches as first species. This example begins half rest, half note. Second species counterpoint, rule number 3. The penultimate or second to last measure may have 2 half notes or 1 whole note in the counterpoint. Second species counterpoint number 4. The counterpoint must always end with a whole note in the last measure. Second species rule number 5. Dissonant passing tones are allowed, but only on the weak beat. In measure 3, we have a consonant third on the downbeat, followed by a dissonant fourth on the weak beat. This dissonant fourth is acceptable because it is a passing tone. Moving here in measure 2, we have a consonant sixth on the downbeat, followed by a fifth on the weak beat. But if you check the key signature, you'll discover that this is a diminished fifth. So this is a dissonant passing tone as well. Dissonant passing tones allowed on the weak beat only. Rule number 6, only consonant neighbor tones allowed. In measure 9, you will see you have a combination of 6, 5, 3. This is considered a consonant neighbor. Major sixth, perfect fifth, major third. In measure 5, 6, 5, 8 appears to be consonant, but you'll discover that this is a major sixth, a diminished fifth, going to an octave. So this would be considered a dissonant neighbor because this fifth should be labeled as a tritone instead of a 5, and it is a dissonant interval. So this is not acceptable. Generally, any combination of 5-6 or 6-5, as long as the fifth is perfect, would mean consonant neighbor tones. Second species counterpoint, rule number 7. Internal unisons are allowed on weak beats only. Unisons are always allowed on the downbeat in the first and the last measure, and they can either be on the first beat or second beat in the first measure, always on the first beat in the last measure. But in any time between the first and the last measures, unisons may only appear on the weak beat. So you can see here we have in measure 4 a fifth on the downbeat, and then a unison on the weak beat, and then a sixth on the next downbeat. This is an acceptable use of an internal unison. Rule number 8. 2 consecutive leaps in the same direction are allowed as long as they do not outline a dissonant interval or exceed an octave. In measures 11 and 12, the counterpoint leaps a third followed by a fourth, creating intervals of a tenth, an octave, and a third. All the intervals are consonant, and the leaps together outline a sixth. So this is an acceptable use of 2 leaps in the same direction. Rule number 9. In second species, you are never allowed to tie in the counterpoint. So no ties in second species counterpoint. Second species rule number 10, no more than 3 measures with the same interval on the downbeat. And that can only be thirds or sixes. You'll notice in measures are 5, 6, and 7, there is a 6, 6, and 6. This is acceptable. No more than 3 in a row, no more than 3 sixes or 3 thirds. In terms of the weak beat, there is no rule governing that. So you can have as many sixes on the weak beats or as many threes or as many passing tones as you want in a row on the weak beat. Rule number 11, no fifths or octaves on consecutive downbeats. This is known as accented fifths or octaves. So you can't have a fifth on the downbeat of measure 3 and a fifth on the downbeat of measure 4. Now you may have consecutive octaves on weak beats, as you can see here in measure 6 and measure 7 and measure 10 and measure 11. We're not concerned about weak beats, only downbeats. Rule number 12, no parallel fifths or octaves, which occur from beat 3 to beat 1, because that's the only time both voices are moving. So parallel fifths and parallel octaves occur from the weak beat to the strong beat, not the strong beat to the weak beat. Second species counterpoint, rule number 13. Do not leap to the octave in the upper voice on the downbeat. This is known as ottava battuta, otherwise known as beaten or battered octaves. You draw too much attention to the octave when the upper voice leaps to an octave on the strong beat. And it doesn't matter if the upper voice is the counterpoint or the cantus firmus. You may not leap to an octave in the upper voice on the strong beat.